A warm welcome to everyone who is starting to join us for what promises to be an exciting 3 days of thoughtful discussions. I am Gustavo Alegret. I'm a journalist. I work for NTN24 as the US News Director, and I'll be your master of ceremonies for the next 3 days. Before we officially open this year's conference, I want to invite you all to explore the platform that has been built exclusively for this event. If you registered online, you should have received your platform login and password via email. On the platform, you can find the agenda, read more about our speakers, and engage via Twitter with other conference participants using our hashtag, Diálogo CAF 2020. But most importantly, you can network and chat with your fellow attendees as well as submit questions for all our panels. And now we are ready to officially open the 24th Annual CAF Conference.
MC will come back in.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists and viewers, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the iconic 24th Annual CAF Conference hosted by the Inter-American Dialogue, CAF Development Bank of Latin America, and the Organization of American States. We are coming to you live from the conference headquarters here in Washington, D.C. For the first time in its history, the conference is being conducted virtually. A warm welcome to all the viewers who are joining us via our platform, our live stream, and those joining through the platforms of our media partners, El País, America Economía, and NTN24. Before we begin, to be sure to participate in the conversation using our hashtag, Diálogo CAF 2020. To start off our 3 morning of engaging and lively discussions, I would like to introduce Michael Shifter, President of the Inter-American Dialogue, who will offer welcoming remarks, followed by Luis Carranza, President of the CAF Development Bank of Latin America. Michael.
Thank you, Gustavo, and good morning or good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. It is a great pleasure to welcome everyone to the 24th Annual CAF Conference. For more than 2 decades, the Dialogue has been collaborating with CAF to produce this annual event, also supported by the OAS. Since 1996, the conference has been held on the Wednesday and Thursday after Labor Day. The idea was to bring people together to focus afresh on the agenda in the Americas after the summer holidays when students go back to school. Yet this year, the notion of going back to school has acquired new meaning. The global pandemic has altered all of our lives, at least for some time, perhaps even permanently. So we are convening virtually, and though we miss seeing everyone in person, we are thrilled to have over 5,000 registered participants. In the conference's 24-year history, I cannot recall another time as critical as today to bring together diverse and influential perspectives from around the hemisphere to focus on a common agenda. The purpose of the conference is to address together the formidable challenges we confront with the seriousness and imagination that this sober moment demands. For the dialogue, this conference has always represented an opportunity to rethink and reshape our agenda moving forward and to incorporate invaluable inputs to advance our mission of fostering democratic governance, prosperity, and social equity in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is our hope that this space for open and frank exchange and thoughtful reflection will help contribute in some measure to greater hemispheric cooperation, which is needed now more than ever. This year, we are particularly fortunate to feature a wide array of exceptionally high-quality speakers. We thank them for agreeing to participate and share their views. They will examine the social and economic implications of COVID-19, the weaknesses and strengths of the region's healthcare systems, how to make progress in combating global climate change, threats to democratic governance and the rule of law, and the implications of the upcoming US presidential elections on the region. We are particularly honored to have as our keynote speaker, the President of Uruguay, Luis Lacalle Pou, who will be introduced by the dialogue's co-chair and former Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Ambassador Tom Shannon. Please allow me to give special heartfelt thanks for the impressive organizational work performed by the dialogue's remarkable team, led by Sofia Laninda, a real taskmaster who learned new technologies to make this conference viable, and to Denise Yanovich, who has been working tirelessly over recent months to ensure success. We also owe a huge debt to the excellent CAF team. This has been a genuine and productive partnership, and we hope it will continue. With that introduction, it is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce our partner, the President of CAF, Luis Carranza. President Carranza has been at the helm of CAF since April 2017. Before that, he served as Minister of Economy and Finance of Peru. President Carranza, let me turn it over to you.
Muchas gracias, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. I am very pleased to welcome you to this annual conference that is being held in critical times for the region. This is the most serious crisis for all of the countries in recent memory. Countries are up against structural challenges that have been aggravated by the crisis and new challenges. The pandemic has revealed even more clearly inequality in Latin America, not just income inequality, but inequality in terms of access to public services and goods. We have seen cases of corruption and problems of public administration in the healthcare system. This has had an impact on those who are most vulnerable and has taken away from government. Infrastructure gaps, particularly in the healthcare system and in digital infrastructure, has stood out during the pandemic. Issues of informality have created problems, especially as we've seen people under lockdown. How do we attend to the population by providing them direct cash transfers? Economic recovery is going to be slow and it's going to be based on structures that are not standardized amongst countries. And so we're going to have more expansive fiscal and monetary policy, the possibility of implementing these policies to create jobs and increase productivity, and the financial health of our economies. More solid economic systems are going to be able to absorb this shock. This will be better for their bottom lines and in making credit available to activate the economy. We do have new challenges before us: digital transformation, climate change, geopolitical relations globally. We have to address these in a very consistent way, making the most of opportunities and mitigating risks. If not, inequality will grow in our region. How are we going to tackle these challenges? We have to do so pragmatically and through international cooperation. Latin America was able to climb out of the 1980s financial crisis through fiscal and monetary policies that allowed them to build good policies. We must do the same in terms of social cohesion in our governments, particularly in terms of health and education. We need good regulations, internal processes, resources, human capital, but not conflating the tools with the objectives. We have to close the infrastructure gap, particularly the digital infrastructure gap, because of its need for education. This is going to require fiscal efforts and a great deal of international cooperation so that we can have long-term financing sources at concessional rates that will allow us to move forward in a sustainable manner as we tackle the challenges. There's also a problem in terms of integration, not as a political process, but as a useful tool for improving the well-being of our people. This conference is going to help us to generate ideas that are going to help us to tackle the challenges we have before us. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate. Thank you very much, President Carranza.
Thank you, Michael Shifter. Thank you both for those inspiring words to launch our event. Now I would like to introduce Ambassador Tom Shannon, current co-chair of the board of the Inter-American Dialogue, who will introduce our keynote speaker, President of Uruguay, His Excellency Luis Lacalle Pou. Ambassador Shannon has spent over 30 years in the U.S. Foreign Service, most recently as Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, the third highest ranking position at the State Department. During his career, Ambassador Shannon served in the U.S. Foreign Service at embassies in Guatemala, Brazil, South Africa, and Venezuela. He is currently a senior international policy advisor for Arnold & Porter. It is my pleasure to welcome Ambassador Shannon. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and I'm very grateful for the words of Michael Shifter and Luis Carranza.
We are very honored today to have as our keynote speaker the President of Uruguay, Luis Lacalle Pou. President Lacalle was born in 1973, and at age 47, he represents the vanguard of a new generation of leadership in Latin America. He began his political career in 2000 at the beginning of a new century when he was elected to represent a Uruguayan department, and then he was re-elected for the next legislative terms. And he was the Speaker of the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2012. In 2014, he was elected senator and was senator from 2015 until 2019. On June 30th, 2019, He was elected for the National Party to be their candidate, leading a coalition of parties. He won the presidential elections in 2019, and he was inaugurated in March of 2020. His presidency began with the great challenge of the pandemic and their adverse consequences on our societies and economies. I would like to note that Uruguay has played a central role in diplomacy and politics, not just in South America, but also in the Western Hemisphere for more than a century. Montevideo hosted the 7th Conference of American States in 1993, when at that time Secretary of State Cordell Hull articulated the good neighbor policy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and that's when the relationship between the United States and the countries of the Americas began to improve. Uruguay, for more than a century, has played a core role in cooperation and collaboration. Diplomacy and wisdom is now in the hands of President Lacalle. President Lacalle, thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to hearing your words. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to thank you for this invitation to take part in this very important conference. I've been looking at the list of speakers who will be speaking in these very difficult times that the planet is experiencing. And we'll hear some of the conclusions drawn by very intelligent and experienced individuals. That will be very important. I wanted to commend CAF and congratulate you on your 50th anniversary and point out the historic role you played in our country, and now especially in the context of the pandemic. I want to talk not specifically about what each country has done or what my country has done. I really want to talk about the learning and the new world we have before us. Our government took office in March with a very proactive agenda, with transformations in the government, in the public and private sectors. And 12 days later, we were up against the pandemic as it arrived in our country. We realized that there was not a single predictive model. There was no manual. And if you look at different countries and compare the laws, we started to see uneven results. First, we were looking at the different seasons. So the Northern Hemisphere was in a different season than the Southern Hemisphere. But in both hemispheres, countries were seeing the same, different outcomes. It was no longer a question of winter versus summer. And this is where we started to look at human behavior as the determinant of the deepest consequences of this pandemic. Along those lines, we started to work with a concept that I believe has taken on vital importance in these times. This is a concept that underlies any and every action that a government must implement. That is freedom. Freedom is the purest status of an individual. So you have to have a social freedom and liberty. It's got to be based on solidarity. We don't have different compartments. This is true globalization, because at the end of the day, The world is a single place, and any type of behavior at any place on the globe can unleash, in this case, negative consequences for all of humanity. And that means that generosity, solidarity is no longer voluntary, it is necessary. And that is why liberty must be part and parcel of each of the measures we take. Measures taken without any roadmap, without having any handbook or manual that told us how to handle the pandemic. Of course, countries that already had an infrastructure in place, a healthcare system that had reserves, could maintain a safety net that would help the effects of the pandemic to cause less harm. Of course, countries that had strong economies and those with access to credit had and have different opportunities as we weather the crisis. In our case, it was a healthy economy, but it is one with access to multilateral financial institutions, which we recurred to in these times when our economic resources were not enough. And I think that this is key as we talk about regional and international integration. We have to shore up the IFIs, not just from the perspective of capital and availability of capital, but also they must have a broader set of solutions or a bigger toolkit to address different situations, because what's clear, what we all know, is that we are going to have to live with uncertainty. We are going to have to live in a new normal. And in our country, we have looked at how important science is, that political decisions have to have scientific underpinning. Science has taken on an even more important role in political decision making. And of course, running a country is not a scientific endeavor, but in a time of sicknesses and pandemics, you have to have a backup of scientific knowledge. We have to have academia. We have to have our scientists. And that is a blessing that we need to be grateful for. And also in solving problems. As we all look at effects that we were unaware of. And now we see a pattern, how this disease is unfolding so that we can have answers and responses. So our countries in 3 months would be beginning the tourism season, and this relies heavily on foreigners. We're in a continent where the spread of the disease is very big. And so we have to be extremely careful if we start to think about opening up our borders. So we've put together a group of scientists who have the tourism plan, the summer plan, so that they can come up with a way for our country to be able to let in tourists from other countries who want to spend some vacation time there. And this is something that has been recognized by our entire population. I would like to go back, however, to the concept of liberty. I've discussed this in other international forums. When the pandemic came about, we all had the duty to take care of ourselves, to go into lockdown. And the government does too. It's like a father of a big family that needs to protect its citizens. But it has to be comprehensive, because if it's just about a lockdown, about quarantine, and that is mandated, then we would be failing to pay attention to the other parts of people's lives that are also important. The matter of the economy for us was something key. Those individuals who live on the day-to-day, they're day wage earners. If we were to suggest to them mandatory quarantine based on the pandemic, it could have a big impact. This could lead to a lower standard of living. This could lead to healthcare problems for those individuals and their families. We have to strike a balance between individual freedoms, the need to continue to operate, and taking care of our citizenry, which is also important. So how do we do this? We have to empower citizens liberty. Uruguayans, the citizens of my country, have been exemplary in their response. If today the numbers in our country are acceptable vis-a-vis other countries, it has nothing to do with the government. This was a national effort, and this was the responsible exercise of liberty by our citizens. This is something that we have for the future. Governments that are not afraid of empowering their citizens, that are not afraid of providing information and being transparent with their citizens. That's something that builds confidence and trust. That is another one of the tools that we have so that we can work on uncertainty looking forward. If we have discourse and actions that are transparent, this creates trust, and trust leads to action, and then we've created a virtuous circle. So now I would like to talk about the economy as a consequence of this pandemic. This crisis has almost exceeded the recession of 2009, and all countries have suffered as a result of the situation. Some will have different curves, but what we do know is, like any crisis, the consequences tend to fall on a significant group of citizens.
Today, we have a group of citizens that have had their income fallen because they don't have their monthly salaries. That's where we have to work. Let's end the orthodox concept that a state has a social sensibility or it's orthodox. The decisions and actions should come up according to what is happening. Let's leave the orthodoxy for the academicians, and those who are governing should know that academics and science will provide what we need at different times. And regarding the economic situation in the world, what I mentioned before, that obligation of protecting my citizens, the Uruguayans, any person in any president should do with his citizens. These situations or any action could lead, and any country that has the ability to self-sustain, if there is such a country, you have to create protection measures. And that's where the economy has to make a great, great effort or sacrifice. I spoke to President Xi Jinping, and I said, I proposed what I just mentioned. We have spoken to the government of the United States along the same lines. And I can say confidently that the great nations are open, or they have a vocation to be open. And that, for developing nations, is very important. An integrated and globalized world that taught us more quickly than we expected to obtain other sources of resources and to live a different way needs an open world. A free and open world will be better in the end for humanity. And from this corner of the world, that is what we will be expressing at every level. This also shows something that is very human and that we are living daily when we look at our children and our loved ones. And that is that life is fragile and we never know when it will end. So we must live it intensely. And that also then transfers or translates to relationships amongst nations. We have seen how, in a certain way, the World Trade Organization has stopped or frozen what it's been doing with agreements between countries. We're going towards, or I should say we already are in, a world where supply and demand is rapidly happening and it has to be satisfied as quickly as it emerges. And politics is what is mediating. It is not a pure relationship. Politics is in the middle, the mediator. And we, as governing bodies, have to complement and balance supply and demand. We have to be the mediators. In that sense, I think that the possibility of looking for market niches and quotas to be satisfied is a response that governments have to give to the private sector, to those who propel the production in our countries. So this is how Uruguay has stood in the world with its strengths. This is how Uruguay extends its liberty and sovereignty within its borders and also with the self-assurance of a nation and state that has firm institutions to have relationships with the rest of the world. With this, you can count on our country for this. And you can count on our country, I said, not our government, because our government will end in 4 years. But this idea of being open, solidarious, and to have a relationship with Uruguay is much more than the idea of a president or a political party. It is in our genes. It's part of our essence as a nation from many years ago. This is why we participate in an inclusive of a nationalism, not a refractory nationalism. It is born in the roots of who we are, our identity as a nation, but that, instead of closing us in, allows us to be sure, knowing who we are, that we will openly have relations with the rest of the world. So, taking advantage of this opportunity in these moments, with a pandemic still developing, that does not allow us to loosen our guard. And other countries that seemingly had controlled the situation and where they were doing follow-up on all the people that had been part of the contagion now has been resurging. So we have to control the health situation, but we must also know that this teaches us many things and creates opportunities. And that is the way Uruguay is heading towards, and once more thanking the CAF and tightening and strengthening our links and relationships. Good afternoon and good day to all. Thank you very much, President Lacalle Pou. I like the phrase when you say in defense of an open and free world, and that is what you're...
For such a fascinating remarks. We will now have a 10-minute break. Feel free to take a walk, grab some coffee, or catch up on emails, or take advantage of the networking options on the conference platform. Participate via Twitter in the conversation using our hashtag #DiálogoCAF2020. We will see you back here at 10 a.m. in Bogotá, Lima, Quito, 11 a.m. Eastern Time.